know what other song? The ballads I really love. I love all of his music, but the Lita Ford song that he did too. What's that song?
Yes. Yes.
Whatever that song is with Lita Ford,
Oh,
I love that song. Little
yes.
tribute to Ozzy Osbourne today, guys, who has passed away since our last episode. I don't know why I got teary eyed with that. I guess it's just change. What
Well,
is that?
yeah.
Oh, that's the bird. I was like, where's
And
that
I've got
whistle?
her downstairs.
No, you should have her upstairs. We'd all like to hear the bird.
Well, I didn't know what she'd be saying. So,
For those of you guys who don't know, Kimberly got it's an African, what's it called again?
African gray Congo parrot.
Yes. So the
Yes.
bird is always dancing and singing and stuff like that. So it's just
And barking like a dog and meowing like a cat. And nobody knows their
yes,
roles around here anymore.
absolutely. I went to a concert for Ozzy Osbourne back in Red Rocks, way back in the day. But it was just pouring. Red Rock. If you guys have never been to Red Rocks in Colorado for a concert, it's absolutely amazing. So I highly recommend that if you've never been there. But just pouring rain, and we didn't care. We just stood out there and just let it pour. And I'm sure we were drinking or doing whatever we were doing at the time. But
Yeah, I saw him at Poplar Creek, which was an outside venue in Illinois. And
oh,
then
okay.
I also saw I saw him two or three times throughout, like I went to Ozfest one time, so there was, multiple different ones. And I had told my husband, because we were actually looking at getting tickets to go to London to potentially see Black Sabbath, to see the last, and just some of the tickets we looked at for the concert tickets, I wasn't sure. It's like, are these scams? Are these,
Yeah.
and then just looking at the price, it just didn't make sense. But I told my husband, I said, I give him a month before he passes. And he only
And
lasts.
why do you say that? Just because of his symptoms?
Well, yeah. I mean, he's got very advanced Parkinson's disease. He has always been all about his music. This was his last and final hurrah. And once that was over, just in, working with people and end of life for the last 27 years, I said, oh, he goes, well, you were close. I said, yep. He lasted even shorter amount than I expected him to. That was
Once they kind of don't have a purpose anymore, that's been their identity their whole life, it kind of just like teeters off.
exactly. He did what
Yep.
he was,
And
sent to do.
Parkinson's doesn't come from doing drugs and stuff like that, right? Because he kind of really tortured his body when he was young. That doesn't result in Parkinson's, correct?
Well, it, I would not be surprised because it's environmental. It's from toxins. So
Never know.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it
I
could
hear
have been,
that.
something in the drugs potentially, or, glyphosate is a huge contributor to Parkinson's disease, which is Roundup. So, I mean, that's like the number one, um, precursor to Parkinson's. So who knows? I mean, I imagine their
Interesting.
food is probably better there, but, in London than it is here in the States. But, I don't know.
Oh yeah, it's better. Have you ever watched? I watch sometimes on YouTube episodes of kids trying American food. They're like high schoolers trying American snacks and different things. And sometimes they go, "This tastes like cough syrup." It's like a soda or something that our palate is so used to. But when they taste it, they're like, "This tastes like cough syrup." I mean, it's like some of the stuff that we are used to. They're like, "This is disgusting."
Yeah. Well, it's not food.
Yeah, it's kind
I
of like
mean,
really weird. We're going way off topic today, but that's okay
yeah.
because we don't have to do the same thing every week. But thanks for guys you for coming back for another other episode of Unraveled and Rising. Terry is unable to make it today. She is doing her clinicals because she's finishing her nursing degree and she had to schedule her clinicals today. And we want to support that 100% because she's been working her butt off on that. So we don't want to mess that up. But Kim's here. And the thing that we're going to talk about today, which I think is really interesting, is, Kim and I work with Kimberly on some of her projects. And so I've been heavily involved, and she's has Care Matters Always, caremattersalways.com, which there'll be a link in the notes of this. She has it's a kind of a placement agency. She does consulting for anything home care. She's a placement specialist. She has a registry where she matches caregivers with people that need in-home care in the Denver, Colorado area. And then she's also a dementia specialist. She's a death doula. I mean, She's getting another certification that's coming up in October or something like that.
Yep.
She'll be taking classes. She's quite an extensive, and she's a nurse, so she has quite an extensive background in this area. So we really wanted to focus today on kind of like when your people in your home start aging, your family members start aging, and it doesn't even have to be aging. It could just be some sort of disability or Alzheimer's, dementia, or MS, or any of these kinds of require someone to come in and help. Um, Kimberly will talk about this, but Kimberly, tell the statistics on those full-time caregivers who take care of their families and don't really take care of themselves. What are the stats on people, their health?
Yeah. So the latest stats are 30% of those caregivers actually die before the person they're taking care of. And if the loved one that they're taking care of has dementia, that increases to 40% because they're just on all the time. And Michelle, as you know, unfortunately, I obtained another client last week just because of this exact issue. The son had been living with mom who has dementia, taking care of her for the last 5 years. His sister was in to give him kind of a break, and sister went down to wake brother up, and he was dead in his sleep. So, but they had mentioned he had some cardiac issues, he had some breathing issues. I'm not sure what all of his history was, but he was not caring for himself. And here he's 70 years old, he's dead, and mom is 94 and still going.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff where, and she sees this all the time.
Yeah.
This is something that is a concern. I have a cousin who has been kind of a full-time caretaker for her son who's got some mental health stuff going on, and now she's not only taking care of him, but she moved the whole family, and now she's taking care of 4 kids under kindergarten age and her son, and she never takes time for herself. In fact, I just talked to her a couple of nights ago, and she never ever. In fact, she went to get her feet done, and they kept saying, "Relax your toes, relax your legs," and she said, "I can't. I don't know how to relax my legs," because She's like, "I run on cortisol." That's what she
Yeah.
said. I thought, and she's in her mid 60s, and I thought, I don't know how long she's going to be able to make it like this. It's like
Yeah.
they've aged so much just in the time frame that this has all been going on in the last maybe 4 years. Her and her husband have aged significantly in that time period.
Well, when you look at, the presidents, like before they take the presidency and then the 4 years after, it's like, holy cow, it looks like a 10-15 year process. And it's been 4 years because of just all the stress. And, that's an example that everybody can relate to. Look at those.
Everybody can relate to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even younger folks, this is something that may be interesting to you because, your parents are probably, my guess is they're in their 40s or 50s. And they could be younger, but probably in their 40s or 50s if you're a teenager in your 20s or whatever. Um, and so it may not be an issue right now for you, but in the next, 20 years, if they're healthy, then this was probably going to start becoming a thing. And it's like, and I don't know about you, but when I hit 50, I had started having all kinds of issues that I never had before. It's just part of aging. It's like even blood work, everything was perfect. My eyesight was good, all this stuff. And then all of a sudden you hit 50, I got knee issues. I have an ankle issue. I've had eyesight problems. I'm like, what is happening to me?
Exactly. I had my left eye lens replaced because I didn't want to wear contacts or glasses anymore because my vision seemed like once I turned 40, it just every year it got. As soon as I started wearing contacts, I swear it accelerated. It got even worse. And then, it's like I couldn't see anything. My husband, who's 60, he just had lens implants just last week. It's like we just want to see, like, we just want to be able to see well. But the other thing I want to mention too is, unfortunately, with dementia in particular, people are getting it younger and younger. So family caregivers are becoming younger and younger. It's not uncommon for, someone in their mid-20s to, find out that their parent has, Lewy body dementia or frontal temporal lobe dementia or even early onset of Alzheimer's. And here they are trying to figure out their lives, get their career going, and they don't have PTO, they don't have anything saved, and they're trying to figure out how can they help support their parent. Not to mention the ones that have raised their children and are looking forward to their retirement years, and now they're left to take care of mom and dad too. So it's a real struggle. It's a real issue. I don't think that we've got enough support out there for caregivers. Um, you
Or
know,
family members
yep,
sometimes, yeah, or the people that are sick.
yep, yep.
Can you
We've
talk
got to do
a
better.
little bit, Kimberly, about the trauma around taking care of a family member who you don't have a great relationship with, or may have, been responsible for some of the trauma that you had when you were younger?
Yeah.
How do you are you have any thoughts on that? Like, what do you think about that? Because that kind of seems like that would exacerbate it even more. Like, how do you do
Right,
that?
right. That's one of the main reasons I took this last course, to become a trauma informed consultant. I was initially taking it for my clients with dementia because a lot of things start coming up in dementia. You start to see different behaviors and just different changes. And as a nurse or, a care manager, I have to turn into, a detective and figure out what the heck is going on here. And, I have been able to, unfortunately, with the family's help, sometimes come to conclusions that, there was sexual abuse when somebody was younger. Maybe that's why now we have this drastic change, um, with what's going on, whether that's picking at their skin or just some sort of behavior that's uncommon. And then you've got to look at, okay, what was the change there? And for that particular client, it was a male caregiver that was put into a role that hadn't been previously there. So, but then further going along in supporting the adult children who are caring for their loved ones, there's guilt that comes up, there's resentment that comes up, there's fear, there's all of these emotions. And I've had fairly a good amount of people that tell me that they're just pissed that they have to take care of somebody that never took care of them. So I
Right.
felt like, all right, let me get better informed around this so I can help that support them in doing whatever they're comfortable doing, right? I mean, you're not going to make somebody do something they don't want to do, but help support them so they can feel like they're living up to, whatever it is that they need to be or who they need to be for their parent, but then still take care of themselves, because that's what happens as caregivers. They lose themselves. And then once that person they're caring for does die or, pass away, then they're left with their own identity crisis because they went from whoever they were before to a caregiver, which is a role change. And now that person's gone, so they're not a caregiver anymore, but they're also not that person they used to be. So who am I now? So it's so complex, and just things that people don't think about that.
No, they don't think about that. We don't like to plan for those kinds of things. You
No.
know, most of us don't even plan for our own death, let alone the death of a family member. And it's an uncomfortable conversation to have. I always worry about my dad and his wife, if they've got everything figured out, because I don't know if they do. And at one point I was the uh power of attorney, and then they took it away and gave it to her daughter. And so I don't know what's going on there. It makes me nervous, but the good news is they have each other. So
Yeah.
hopefully, what they're not going to go at the same time, but it's still they're almost 80, both of them. They're, late 70s. But it's that kind of stuff. And then we have those conversations. We're not even planning for our own stuff. You know what I mean? Let alone somebody else's. And
Well,
that's
y- you
tough.
know, I do act on occasion as medical power of attorney for clients if they don't have family members, or maybe they just don't want their family members to be, in that role. And, these are important conversations to have. And, this is one thing that we're guaranteed, right? We're all going to die. There's
Yes.
no getting out of that. You can maybe prolong it a little bit. There's different things you do, but we're all going to die. And I had one of my clients tell me one time that the reason she didn't want to get her living will done and so forth was because she felt like it would be a burden. Well, once so I explained to her what she wanted me to be medical power of attorney and her stepbrother to be the financial. Once I explained to her, us knowing what she wants is going to take away it being a burden. If we don't know, I mean, we're guessing. So having that conversation with her made her, she just went, oh, and I mean, she was a retired attorney. She was, an intelligent woman. But just when it comes to death, it's just something different. And so then I was able to get one of my colleagues who's also a death doula, but she focuses more on the planning, the power of attorney, the living wills, things like that, versus the actual supported end of life, which is more of what I do. And we were able to get it all wrote out, down to the music she wanted played, who she wanted there. She had some paintings that were important to her, who she wanted those to go to. And it just made it so much easier for the two of us when she did pass. It's like, all right, we got this. We know, who's doing what's going where. We knew, where she wanted to be buried. We had all that stuff done. So it just makes it easier. And I can go to sleep at night knowing that I fulfilled what she wanted.
Right. Absolutely. So when things start transitioning in a household where somebody starts, showing signs of needing support, and
Mhm.
that could be anything from, physical disabilities that allow they can't move, not able to move as much, or mental stuff where they're starting to decline mentally, um, and we have to step in and kind of take care of them. Then, can you describe a little bit about kind of what ends up happening, and then especially if you have a full-time caregiver, what are your recommendations there? So I guess maybe starting with the kind of the trauma around those roles changing, because it's your parent. If it's your parent, then all of a sudden you're the parent. That's a
Yep.
hard thing to do when you are used to being taken care of by, or being supported emotionally by somebody else. Then all of a sudden you've got to fill in for that, and it's like there's trauma around that too. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, or
Yeah, well, the other piece that I do want to add is, not everybody and most people are not meant or made to be caregivers, especially to your parent. It's a very different, your parents changed your diapers. Like, that's just part, I mean, I think, I know I've seen my mom's breasts, in the 56 years I've been, but it's been maybe a couple of times. I mean, it's not
yeah,
been, it's
yeah,
just, you just don't do that. You don't share that. So,
yeah,
I would be comfortable, playing that role if I had to, but for some of the, especially sons, when it comes to their moms, or even when it
oh
comes
yeah,
to their dads, you know what I mean? It's different. So I think, I was on a webinar earlier today, and there were some questions that she had, and I thought that was, so it's, am I well matched to my caregiver role? Just
mm,
because you're the person there doesn't mean that you're the best candidate for this job. And, a lot of times when, we're talking about seniors, we're looking at the finances, right? Maybe, unfortunately, some, adult children plan on that inheritance for their retirement. Others don't have to do that. Um, and so it becomes tricky and complicated and judgy and all sorts of things. But I thought this was kind of, I'm just going to go through some of these.
yeah,
Am I closest emotionally to the person who needs care? Because if you are, that's going to be a really tough role to play. Am I closest geographically to the person who needs care? Now, oftentimes, what I find is often the person that's not there every day and that's across the country, when things happen, they want to all of a sudden be in charge. Well, that, of course, causes some conflict. Who are you? What are you talking about? You've not been here every day. So just things to think about. I believe I have a natural caregiving instinct. Well, I'll tell you what, when my son was young and he started having seizures, I was a nurse, but when my son was getting a spinal tap and I was asked to step out of the ER, which I was happy to do because I didn't want to see it, I was walking down the hall and I heard him screaming and crying. And it's so different when it's your child or your loved
Yeah.
one. Like that nursing hat comes off, like what's wrong with my baby? What are they doing to my baby? So, you have to really check in with that. That's your mom or that's your dad. Are you going to be okay with this? Um,
Yes.
I like
Agreed.
being in charge. Is that why you want to be the caregiver? So really looking inward, because this isn't about you. It's about them. And are you able to be who they need you to be in this situation? Um, I am willing to make tremendous sacrifices on behalf of the person who needs care. I am not taking care of small children or other loved ones with illnesses or disabilities. I am in good health, both physically and mentally. And then there's a whole like a scoring, but I just, there was a few other things too, but I just thought it was a good, people with well-meaning, they want to step in, they want to be the caregiver, but this might be the time where you want to go ahead and spend that money and let the professional caregivers do the transfers, do the cleaning of your loved one, help with that stuff that they're trained to do that you're not trained to do. So they're going to be able to do it much easier. Chances
Yes.
are your loved one's going to let a stranger, believe it or not, do certain things to them that they're not going to be comfortable with you as their daughter or son or granddaughter or whatever doing. If they have dementia, they may not be able to verbalize that, but maybe they're fighting you. Maybe every time you go to change them, they're punching or they're, because they're not comfortable in that position. So
Yeah.
really thinking about that. And when you become a caregiver, that's a role change too. So you're no longer the daughter. You're no
Yep.
longer the son. You're now a caregiver. Is that the role you want to be to your loved one at the end of life? Likely not. Or is that, like I said, checking inside yourself, are you trying to fulfill something maybe that you feel guilty that you weren't there for something in the past, so now you're trying to consciously or unconsciously kind of make up for that. If so, this isn't the time you want to do that.
Makes complete sense.
So
And
yeah.
there's, I think the trauma too around um, the fact that you may have to put them in a place them somewhere else if you don't have the ability to the finances or the ability to do it. Like my cousin in South Dakota she has the finances right now to have in-home care, and my goal is to try to keep her at home because that's her desire. And we
Mhm.
did all of this medical power of attorney stuff when she 6 years ago, when she still had everything set. So I am that for her, and she doesn't have any other family. But I am not a caregiver, and I will say that. I can run errands and help her with her bills and stuff like that. But as far as doing the daily caregiving, I am not that person. I
Yeah.
just, it's just not who I don't feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah. And good for
So
kudos to you though for knowing that.
yeah.
You know what I
So we
mean?
have caregivers, but it's like if I have to make the decision, the one thing that I know is going to be hard. She's not going to leave that house. She's been in this house her whole life, and it was their mom's house that her
Mm.
mom, her ex, her stepdad built back in the 50s. I think it was late 50s, maybe early 60s, something like that. She's been in that house her whole life. And when her mom died when she was in her 20s, she came back home because she was in another place working. So she's been in that house since the 70s,
Yeah.
mid 70s, and she's not left that home. So she's been there however many years that is, 50
Yeah.
years or whatever, 60. And she's not going to leave that house without kicking and screaming. Like, she's going to have to be forced. She's going to have to be taken out in a wheelchair or on a stretcher or whatever. And I am so regretting that because I don't want to be. I'm just, I have a little bit. I don't have guilt, but I know that's going to be very difficult. And even if I try to go visit her in the nursing home, she's going to be angry. So that part I'm not looking forward to.
Well, you know what? I have, and that day may never come, Michelle, either.
That's what I'm hoping for.
I've had clients too that have been very, very dead set against leaving their homes, and they're deteriorating. and they're knowing that this is coming, and oftentimes they're able to let go and move on before that decision ever needs to be made. So she may do you the blessing of passing before that happens. Um, you know, I feel like with literally the hundreds of people I have sat next to, whether it was as a trauma nurse or a hospice nurse or a death doula that have died, people do have some control over the timing of their passing. You know,
Interesting.
I've been there when, you know, in the ICU, when, you know, the family is there around the clock, and they finally step away to get a cup of coffee. And that's when the person goes, because the person wants to die alone. These are some of the conversations I have with people too. Who do you want present? Some people want to pass alone. And then if they're not given that opportunity, they're going to linger. You know, I've also been there when, you know, they hang on until that last son arrives to the hospital room that just, you know, flew in from Seattle or whatever, and then they go. So, I mean, I really feel like we have, you know, some control over that. Just because I've seen it so many times that there's no denying it.
And is that mental stuff that just tells the body to stop working? How does it work? Like, how does your body work like that?
Well, so I was an organ recovery coordinator for about a year and a half. And that's when I was dealing with clinically brain dead patients, and we were procuring their organs for others. So it is very, very difficult to keep a body living from a brain that's dead. Okay, so there's definitely a connection. It's, you know, from, you know, giving all the medications and all. I mean, it's very difficult to keep a body going if the brain is dead. So I definitely believe there's a mind, body, and spirit connection, and it's all got to be ready to go. Now, are there times when the body's just giving up and the person's still, you know, that's, I think, when it's hard too, is they know that they're going, and if they don't want to go, and you know, their body's failing them, that makes it a little bit tougher. But to be able to have these conversations and just talk about this ahead of time. I remember one gentleman that I wound up doing an intake for him to come on to hospice, and he didn't want hospice. He lived in independent living. He didn't need help, this and that. Well, I just happened to mention to the family, now that was here in Colorado, that I was doing the intake, but someone would be covering for me the first couple of visits because I was going home to visit my mom. And they just happened to say, you know, where's home? And I said, Downers Grove. And they asked me what street. And I thought, well, that's kind of strange. So I tell them the street, and they were like, oh my God. And I'm like, what? We moved into the house in 1979. They moved out 2 doors down. They lived from me. In 1970, they moved out. So the farm, I mean, I remember I was like, that was them. So because of that, then Tom and I had a connection, right? Because it was like, oh, you know what I mean? So that was our way to have a connection. But he and I had, after that, he was an atheist also. But he supported his wife in her church. He would go to church every Sunday. He would set up, he would do whatever she wanted. He just didn't have that belief.
Yeah.
And someone had told him, unfortunately, that since he was an atheist, that he was never going to see her again. And he had shared that with me. So I told him, I said, Tom, so I have some concerns. You know, you're going to be struggling spiritually when it's time for you to pass. So we talked about maybe some things that we would do to help with that. And he had also shared with me that he wanted to die alone. 2 of his daughters, they were very different from one another. One of them, she and I developed a very good relationship. And the other one was just kind of always pissed off at everybody. And we wound up needing to put him in skilled nursing towards the end because his pain was getting out of control. And I remember the nurse calling me at like 7 in the morning because I would visit him every day because I knew the time was coming. And she said, you know, he was up screaming all night in pain. And I said, all right, I'm going to be there and I'm going to stay with him until he passes. And I got there early in the morning, probably by like 7:30, 8 o'clock. Called his daughter. Both the daughters came and in and out and this and that. And I shared with the one daughter that he wants, you know, I told her before that he wanted to die alone. The other daughter thought I was just making that up. Like, why would I ever make that up? But, you know, she had to deal with her own stuff. And I get that. I don't take it personal. And so he was crying, he was screaming. He and I had shared, he had shared with me that him and his wife had really liked operas and went to Fan Love the Opera. So he and I would listen to that music together. So I put that music on my phone. I put it next to his ear. I brought some, you know, my diffuser with some lavender and I rubbed him with, you know, lavender lotion. And I was there for a good 12, 13 hours and I could tell he was getting close. So I opened the windows and did all the things that we had talked about. And I told his daughter, I said, I'm going to leave. I said, promise me that you'll leave within 20 minutes. I said, or he is not going to pass. And as you can see, he's had a very tough day. I feel like we're close, but he's going to need this. And so she texted me. I was driving home from Aurora. She texted me, all right, I left. And within 15 minutes, we got a call that he died. So she and I, you know, turned back and went there and finished things up. But I mean, he probably would have lingered had she not left. So
Yeah.
that's why these conversations are just so important to have. So that you know, and I get they're hard, but choose your
Yeah.
hard. Choose your hard. You know what I mean? Do you want to know or do you want to be left guessing? To me, that'd be much harder to try to guess what somebody else would want.
Yeah. And if they don't feel comfortable having the conversation with you, if you bring it up, then say, well, can you write it down for me? Do you mind writing it down? Or can you record a video of what you want or whatever, however you, or dictate into a phone what you want? You know, like if they don't want to actually have the conversation with you, then maybe they could talk to a third party and make sure they have that information, or they can record it, or they can write it, anything so that, and if they don't want to share it with you right now,
Right.
you know, maybe you have to go through an attorney or somebody or something to be able to share that information. So, you know, do it that way if that's what they want, you know?
And, you know, I've also, you know, had people where we've been able to set agreements and appointments. Okay, you don't want to have this conversation now. Get out the calendar. This day, this time, that's when we're going to have this conversation so that they can prepare.
Yeah.
Right. And it can go very differently once they're prepared. Is it tearful? Is it emotional? Yeah, a lot of times it is. Absolutely. But that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It should be, right? I mean, it's a
Yeah.
sacred time. So it should be given the time and the energy. And to me, it is a choice. And people should have options. They should be able to be out of pain, be out of misery, you know, whatever it is, in the way that they want to be able to do that. I also support medical aid in dying. And, you know, I mean, I have my own choices. Everybody else should have theirs as well.
Yeah. Makes complete sense.
Yeah.
So what are your tips for caregivers to take care of themselves so they don't become one of those statistics you were talking about earlier? You know, what is a recommendation you have to kind of help with that?
So, in the case I was talking about, the brother that died, there's 7 siblings, well, now 6. Really, only 2 of them had been involved, and now there's, you know, the others who don't really want to be involved, but the ones that are involved are feeling resentment about this. So I talked with them about just asking them, okay, how are you going to be able to contribute? It's how you ask the question. Just not, are you going to be able to contribute? How are you going to be able to contribute? This is what I plan to do. Is it money? Is it time? Is it, they're going to come once every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks to give you a break? How are you going? So making other people kind of stand up and be accountable, because it should not be all on one person. And that being said, there was another in that webinar I was on today. It was caregiver martyr syndrome checklist. Have you noticed stomach aches? Have you, so really, again, looking at yourself. Are you trying to take on the world when the neighbor keeps asking you, what can I do to help? And you keep saying nothing. Well, maybe you need her to run to the grocery store. Maybe you need him to pick up that prescription. Use the people that are asking and are offering the help. Maybe you need them to mow the lawn. I mean, divvy out any task that you can. Do not take it on alone. Do you have a church group? Do you have, a peer group, neighbors? I mean, there's a lot of different avenues out there, but like it said, don't be the martyr. When people ask, what can I do? Seriously think about that and tell them, because they don't know how else to help other than by asking. So give them something to do. Everybody needs purpose. Everybody needs, everybody wants to feel needed. So give them something to do. Do some self-care. If that means even doing some deep breathing, once every couple of hours, if you've got to go to the bathroom to do that. Or are they going to nap? Can you go out and can you take a walk? Can you, scheduling days off for yourself? Maybe that's when you're bringing in the professional caregiver. 2 days a week, 8 hours a day, I need to go hike, or I need to go out with my friends. I need to do this. I need to do that. You've got to give yourself those breaks and those things that make you thrive. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not taking care of your loved one either.
Yes. So true. This is good stuff, Kimberly.
Yeah, it is.
I like it.
And reaching out to that community, like I said, there's people all the time that are offering, so many times. Like I remember going to a client's house and I was like, is there a lawn service? Oh, I don't know what it was, because mom used somebody and blah, 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 blah. Well, then he says something about the neighbor keeps asking. I go, ask the neighbor to mow the lawn. I couldn't do that. Why not?
Right. Yeah.
And he did. And guess what? The neighbor was more than happy to take care of the lawn, because they felt like they were helping, like they were contributing.
I love that. Love, love, love. And I thought it's so interesting. I didn't really think about a lot of these concepts at all, Kimberly, until you and I started working together on some projects. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden, all this stuff is in there. I mean, I started, I've been involved in it since my mom passed away in 2019, because it was my mom and then my grandma and now my cousin. So I've been involved kind of on that side, but didn't even consider it prior to that. Didn't even think about what was going to happen. I was just kind of just living the dream without thinking about it. So, and I'm not, the more that I do it, the more that I'm kind of in it, the less scary it is for me.
Yeah.
The unknown is the scary part sometimes, guys. It's that fact that you're just avoiding it because it's a hard conversation, or because it's unknown, or it's scary, or whatever. But as we all know, we've talked about this many times, that, fear is not the place you want to live.
Nope.
Not doing things because of fear is never something that's going to end positively or end well for you. And, self-love and self-care, no matter if you're a caregiver or this is a situation for you, the common theme we have talked about on Unraveled and Rising is self-care and self-love and grace and all those things. And you can't have that for yourself if you don't take care of yourself.
Right.
You just can't.
Right. There's going to be resentment. There's going to be guilt. There's going to be frustration. So, if you've had kids, what do you do when you're, the other day, my husband and I were watching some show. Oh, it was yesterday, some crazy show. This woman like acting like a child and just being obnoxious. My husband looks at me, because he never had kids. He goes, what would you do? I said, I would walk away. As a parent at that point, I would just walk away. Because you don't want to strangle them, right? That's frowned upon. So
that's a disclaimer. No strangling allowed.
Right. So sometimes you just got to walk away, right? Go into the other room, take a deep breath, collect yourself. If you feel yourself getting angry, if you feel yourself getting triggered, that's about you. That's what you need to take care of.
Yes.
because the person you're taking care of is doing the best that they can. They're not able to change. So you're the one that has to make the changes, also knowing that you're doing the best that you can. So that's when that grace comes in, right? Giving yourself some grace. You're doing a tough job and it sucks, and call it what it is. I mean, it is hard, probably the hardest work you will ever do.
March last time I was taking care of my cousin, and I was just there for the 4th of July week, and I was there for a couple of weeks. And she was showing me how she fed her 2 cats, which are her the only thing that she cares about in life is her 2 cats and her TV. Um, and she was feeding her cats, and she feeds them a little bit of wet food and a little bit of dry food. But when she had the bowls up there, she put 3 pieces of dry cat food. 3, 1, 2, 3 little teeny pieces. And then and I said, I said, why is there only 3? And she's like, that's all I put in there is 3. And it was like she had to count them out, 1, 2, 3, and then she had to put her little, dab of. And her and I just started laughing because it was just so silly. And I go, why are you doing that? And I just started busting up, and she started laughing, and we just had a big laugh fest around it because it just didn't make any sense. But hey, she's doing the best she can, and if that's what she does, that's what she does.
They're
It was
living
just
off of
hilarious.
three pieces of food and a dab of wet a day.
I was like, okay, that's what we're doing, huh? All right then. So
Well,
we just had
in a
that good
good
laugh.
in a good laugh too. I mean, to release that oxytocin and those endorphins. That's some of
Yeah.
the best. I can't tell you how many clients. Well, my client yesterday, he's such a crab sometimes. And we were going back and forth about his medications. Every time I'm there, I'm arguing with him about the time he's supposed to take his medication because he doesn't take it on time. And then last time I was there, he was telling me that I messed up his pills or whatever. I go, if you found that I've messed your pills, I want you to call me right then. And I said, because I don't believe you. So yesterday he tells me, and you messed up the meds again. And I said, really? I didn't receive a phone call. And he and I just looked at each other. We just bursted out laughing. I'm like, I told you, unless you call me and I see it, I don't believe you. And he was just laughing. And it's
Yes.
he's trying to get mean with me. And I'm like, you're lying, So it's, having that a good.
The other thing too, I don't want to end on a negative note, but the other thing too is when they start changing their behavior and they start saying things that are hurtful, and that is not who they are, but it's because of what's going on mentally that starts happening. My grandfather, who was the most wonderful man ever, my mom's dad, he was such a kind, loving soul, but he got dementia. They said it was Alzheimer's. I think back then, in the 90s, I don't think they said dementia a lot. It was probably more Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
But he started to get violent, and he started saying some. I'd walk in to see him at the nursing home, and he goes, "Now, why'd you do your hair like that?" or something like that. Something he would say something about me physically, which for all of you guys who have heard my story, that is not necessarily the best thing for me because I criticize myself. So the fact that you go in and your loved one's like, "Why is your hair like that?" I'm like, "Dang it!"
Oh yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah.
like that's tough because it's like they're all of a sudden they're saying hurtful stuff.
Oh
And it's
yeah.
like you have to be able to like not respond to that, and that's freaking hard.
Well, you've got to be able to not take it personal.
Yes,
You know what
do.
I mean? I mean, I've had patients before, but wow, that's a big ass. Well, thank you.
To you?
Oh yeah, yeah. And I just laugh. I'm just like, oh boy. You just can't take it personal. You just can't.
No.
It's
They're not, like you said, they're not doing it intentionally. They're
well,
they're things are not working 100%, and they would never say something like that if they were.
right. They're not firing.
Well, maybe they would if they're assholes. I don't know, but
Yeah.
so,
It's potentially they could, but for the most part, I mean, people,
yeah.
are cordial. They're going to be nice, but yeah, you bend over and say something about your big butt.
You're like, okay.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
That's a good thing these days. It's like a compliment.
I guess.
So, or maybe it was, 5 years ago. I don't know. Either way. This has been really good, Kimberly, because I think it's something that we don't talk about enough. And just for everybody that's listening or watching, we're going to start a whole series on just healthcare in general. Because Terry and Kimberly, as I keep mentioning, are both nurses, and they have some very specific thoughts on concerns in healthcare in general and the future of healthcare. And you probably have seen things on the news or read things about shortages in nurses or doctors or things that are going forward. So we're going to start a whole series on that. We won't do it the same thing every week. We'll kind of skip around, but that's something we're going to start talking about because they have concerns and I've listened to their concerns, and because of their concerns I have concerns about my own healthcare in the future. And so something that's going to be interesting. So it's going to be a topic that I think folks should be discussing.
Yeah, and if there's any specific questions or, topics you'd like us to cover, let us know. I've got 27 years. Terry's got, I think, 23. So, I mean, we've got like 50 years of healthcare experience between the two of us. And, in all different realms as well. And she's, got the mental health component. I've got the senior component, the dementia, so we've got, I also do placement. So, I mean, there's a lots of things to consider. And unfortunately, our healthcare system is kind of the worst I've ever seen it in 27 years, which is our current state. So,
yeah,
I don't know what we're going to do.
And Terry always said, too, it's a business. She goes, I hate to say this about my own industry, but it's a business. Mm-hmm. All the stuff, all the, medications and the drugs and stuff you see on commercials, it's a business. They are trying to sell that stuff. Absolutely. It doesn't matter necessarily. If you need to be prescribed that, they're going to do it because it's a business, and that's just what it is. It's unfortunate.
Yep. But the most important things you can do for yourself, no matter what, is get good sleep, 7 to 8 hours a night, which means you need to be in bed at least an hour longer than that to fall asleep, and just go through that process. Avoid processed foods as much as possible. Anything that has a label on it that tells you how healthy it is means it's processed. Because does broccoli have a label on it telling you how good it is? Does steak have a label on it telling you how good it is? No. So try to do, good whole foods. Stay away from the refined sugars. Move your body. You've got to move your body. Michelle and I both got to the gym this morning. So whatever that is, and people always ask me, what's the best exercise? My response is the one you're going to do, because it doesn't matter. I can give you all sorts of stuff, but if you're not going to do it, it doesn't matter. So the one that you're going to, if you could commit to doing something 20 minutes every single day, will make all the difference.
Yep.
Truly.
That's exactly what my doctor told me too. If you could just do something, and you need to get your heart rate up a little bit. It's not just doing anything. For your heart, just heart health in general, I think it's important to get your heart rate up for 20 minutes. Doesn't mean that you have to kill yourself. I mean, you could take a swim. You could, just walk a little faster, or walk up a hill, or walk, up some steps, or, you don't have to kill yourself here. It's just a matter of elevating the heart.
Yeah, resistance training is awesome. It's good on your joints. It gets your heart rate up just slightly. It works your muscles. And that's something you can do. You could take bands with you anywhere, right?
Yes,
you could do a 20-minute workout. So, there's really no excuse to
even like chair yoga. If there's videos on YouTube, like exercises you can do in your hotel room and things like that, where even if you do chair yoga, I know that sounds like an old lady thing, but they actually have some great chair yoga that actually builds your it actually is like cardio too.
Mm-hmm.
You can do yoga poses in your hotel room. You can, like she said, bring bands. You can bring bands in your suitcase easily.
Yeah.
And just, do something with them.
My husband has some in his office at work, because he usually can't get out to go to the gym. He works out at home, but at work time, he'll just do bands for 10, 15 minutes and then, shove a salad down his throat or whatever.
Right. So yeah, exactly.
At any opportunity you get to move your body, it's going to help get blood flow to that brain. So, and that's going to be better for everybody, because the more oxygen you're getting to the brain, the better you're perfusing the brain, the better your thoughts are, the better, our brains always want to go to the negative. So let's keep them good and flourish. Staying hydrated is also important. But there's no magic, it's not a magic bullet. It's daily choices. Control the controllables. There's so many things in our life we have no control over. But these are some things that we do. We can control what we put in our mouths, when we lay our heads down, and when and if we move our bodies.
So true. That's a great way to end it, Kimberly. Thanks
Yep.
everybody for listening today or watching. We appreciate you. Like, comment, subscribe, share this out to somebody who might like to see it. And again, we've got some good things coming up, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.